my friends, J.R. Dukes at your service. Appreciate everybody being here with me today. Hello and welcome to today's program. We're going to have a relatively short, abbreviated section today, but I have some very important, somewhat breaking news that we are going to go over together. So give me 1 second to make sure everything is working the way it should be working. Hello to all the viewers on X platform. Appreciate y'all being here. Our friends on the Twitch platform, and of course YouTube. If you have any issues hearing me or anything, please put it in the comments so that I can correct or address anything or any concerns y'all may have. All right, we're already getting a couple text messages. Julianne, thank you for being here. Appreciate you as always. Okay, here we go. If you are new to the program, welcome. I am J.R. Dukes. I am all about ending indoctrination, understanding the world we live in. I love to talk about any and all things dealing with politics, the law, police, and how to just basically navigate and deal with the world that we live in. And of course, there's always a lot of breaking news going on right now in our country. And it feels good to be back with y'all again today and have another opportunity to just have a discussion about what is going on today in the world. And of course, today we're going to talk about sweet Letitia James. All right, and I just put the link in the comment section right there. So this particular link, if you would like to call in, you don't have to appear on video, feel free to hit that link. Additionally, if you like to appear by video, you have a comment or a question, I'm happy to entertain anything or any questions y'all might have. So we are going to go ahead and get started right now. We are all familiar with Letitia James. Remember her of the great state of New York, the current Attorney General serving in New York, right? Let's go ahead and let's kick her on here. Yeah, Julianne, Letitia is in the hot seat and we'll get a lot of watchers. Yes, absolutely. My guess is she will ignore them. She is in deep problems. If y'all remember, just the other day, we talked about this on one of the live streams that I was doing. I think it was a guy over at a website called White Collar Crime. He was all over this, and I think he needs basically just, it needs to be acknowledged that his research, his digging into this particular case is apparently what has brought this to the forefront, which of course I'm grateful for. It reminds me of the great attorney. Remember that attorney out of Marietta, Georgia, Ashley Merchant of the Fannie Willis fame, and her lover boy, Nathan Wade. And we're going to be talking a lot more about them. I think they're also in trouble, but it was Ashley Merchant that went ahead and she was tenacious. She was digging through all the records. I mean, she was making all kinds of public record requests. She was digging through every type of record you can possibly imagine on behalf and for her client, Michael Roman. And thank God that she did, because she single-handedly, in my humble opinion, she really took that case in a different direction. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Letitia James. You knew the way she went after and engaged in this lawfare. I mean, you know what? It's more than lawfare, in my opinion. This was just outright, I'm going to get that man. I'm going to take that man down. I have some of the videos today that we can take a look at together just to remind everybody and refresh everybody's memory of exactly all the malfeasance that she engaged in. It's just absolutely terrible what she did. It's something's wrong where you can run in our country and your platform is, I'm going to get Donald Trump. I'm going to take him down. One of the videos hopefully we'll look at today, Letitia James is talking to one of her apparent supporters, and she says, yes, I'm going to get him, and I'm going to be a real big pain in his backside. Of course, I'm filling in a word right there, but we know what she said, and I will gladly remind you as to what she said. And now she's about to get some retribution. Because listen, folks, when you live in glass houses, what's the expression? You should not be throwing stones. And of course, that's exactly what is happening to her. Unfortunately, she stepped in it, and now she's going to pay the price. Quickly, this particular crime, if true, reminds me clearly of the former mayor of Baltimore. We talked about this at some point in the near past. She also came up against Donald Trump, and she got in trouble for some type of mortgage-related crimes. She just got done finishing 3 years in custody in a federal pen. So too bad, so sad, right? That's the way it goes. Bear Ashby, thank you for being here today. Appreciate having you, and welcome to everyone. If, again, any questions as everybody is starting to get set here, go ahead and put it in the comment bar. Be happy to answer anything that you'll have. So without further ado, let's drill down to this. This article is today from the New York Post. Well, Trump administration refers, and I have this letter. We're going to take a look at it too. It's definitely the type of letter that you don't ever want to be the subject of. You don't ever want to be the target of an investigation, or in this case with the DOJ, the target or the receiving the referral of an investigation. Bad news all day long. Not a very good day for Letitia James. And of course, she's still very defiant. But ladies and gentlemen, she's going to get the retribution. She's going to get the payback that she so richly deserves. So let's take a look at this article again today from the New York Post. Trump administration refers New York Attorney General Letitia James for potential prosecution. I can pretty well guarantee you that there's nothing potential about this. She is going down over alleged mortgage fraud. Wait till you hear the allegations in this particular letter right here, okay? Washington, Daylight Washington, New York Attorney General Letitia James, who infamously declared that, quote, no one is above the law, end quote, when she targeted Donald Trump, was hit with a federal criminal referral for instances of alleged, she's guilty, alleged mortgage fraud on Tuesday, according to a letter obtained by the Post. And we'll take a look at that letter. This letter was sent by an agency in the government. Y'all may never have heard of them, but the name of the agency is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, which goes by FHFA. Director William Puttle, I guess that's how you say his last name, sent the missive to Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. We remember, of course, Pam Bondi, and we definitely remember Todd Blanche. He was definitely a very fierce advocate for Donald Trump, and I believe he was one of his lead attorneys, especially in the New York case for Mr. Trump. He, if my memory serves me, was the attorney that was actually with President Trump during that so-called New York sentencing in front of that very liberal judge that has a daughter that's like a huge campaign coordinator, contributor, advocate for the Democratic Party. So we'll see how many of these people end up in trouble as time goes on. But continuing on, alleged that James had falsified records to get home loans for property in Virginia that she claimed was her physical residence. Now, listen, principal residence, physical residence is the same thing as what we call, and I've always referred to as a domicile. Okay, now not to confuse the issue here. You can have as many residents as you want. You can have residents all over the world. There's nothing illegal about that. The problem here is she claimed under penalty of perjury that this particular residence in Virginia, she's the attorney general of the state of New York. It is an office that requires you to live within the state of New York in order to be eligible to run for that position. And you have to maintain a residence in the state of New York to keep that position as attorney general. If you think about it, it kind of makes sense. I mean, that just kind of basically is common sense. I mean, you want to represent people that you live among or that you live with, ever how you want to state it. It turns out that this domicile / principal residence that she swore to in Virginia in 2023, while still serving as New York State prosecutor, that's what's going to get her in trouble. But wait, folks, there is more. That occurred in late August 2023, weeks before James began her civil fraud trial against the Trump organization. Remember, not only did she hammer Donald Trump, she also hammered Donald Trump's children and the company, I guess you can call it, that Donald Trump started, ran, whatever. They refer to themselves as the Trump organization for overinflating the values of many of its properties, which ended in a $454 million judgment that the Trump organization had to pay to the state of New York. Isn't that ridiculous? $454 million. Just an absolute outrage. Ms. James was the sitting attorney general of New York and is required by law to have her primary residence in the state of New York, even though her mortgage applications list her intent to have the Norfolk, Virginia property as her primary home, the letter stated. It appears Miss James's property and mortgage-related misrepresentations may have continued to her recent 2023 Norfolk, Virginia property purchased in order to secure a lower interest rate and a more favorable loan terms. Generally, if you live in the house that you want a mortgage on, you generally get better terms as far as the interest rates and things like this. But the bank wants to make sure that indeed you're going to live in that property, that it's not something you're using for a commercial purpose or something along them lines. And you know what? The rich thing here, this is what's rich about this whole scenario, at least in my mind. Very rich, very interesting. This is kind of the same thing that she was hammering Donald Trump for. Remember the Judge Engeron talking about the Mar-a-Lago estate, saying that it's only worth $18 million. That's what the New York Attorney General was saying. That's what this Judge Engeron was saying. And of course, it's worth way more money than that. The bottom line here is the same type of crimes, if you will, that she was going after Donald Trump for. Guess what? Surprise, surprise. She's now in the hot seat for. It's probably the best way to say it. So here is a list. Stay updated on Letitia's mortgage fraud scandal. So they kind of listed out right here what their past articles were pertaining to this. In February 2001, James also purchased a 5-family dwelling in Brooklyn, but has consistently misrepresented the same property as only having 4 units in both building permit applications and numerous mortgage fraud documents and applications, the letter noted. It goes on to say, attached are several documents and also showing that James purchased another property. Remember, there's more than just one property. It's not just a Virginia property and her property in New York. Her mortgage fraud, again, if true, this is extensive. It's something that's going to require substantial investigation. The good thing about this type of crime, or I should say the bad thing in her case, is it's documented. I mean, it's all in black and white. It is notarized. It's very clear as to what it says. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. But here's what I want you to take away from this section right here. It says that in these documents, James purchased another property with her father as a co-signer. But here's the kicker. Ta-da! She falsely listed herself and her father as husband and wife in 1983 and in 2000. While that's a long time ago, it raises serious concerns about the validity of Mrs. James's representation on mortgage applications, he wrote. Attorney General James is focused every single day on protecting New Yorkers, especially as this administration weaponizes the federal government against the rule of law and the Constitution. She will not be intimidated by bullies, no matter who they are, a spokesperson for her office said in a statement. Again, how much more richer can you get? This is, it's just the complete opposite of what she was saying when she was going after Donald Trump. And now she's trying to act like, I mean, she's the one, along with others, that engage in this lawfare, this weaponization of the legal system. It's funny how they don't like it when it's on the other foot, right? Very interesting how they don't like that. All right, the letter referenced earlier media reports about James purported falsifying her residence status to get a lower mortgage rate in Virginia, misrepresenting her 5-unit residence in Brooklyn, which were first reported, and this is the guy we've been talking about in the articles we've been reading. It's he calls himself the white collar fraud. It's just a news media outlet that apparently that individual owns. And he's doing a great service. So if you're watching this program, keep it up, please. We appreciate it. James granted power of attorney to Shamice Thompson Hairston, a relative, to sign a August 17th, 2023 document authorizing the purchase of the first property, according to legal filings reported by the outlet. That's that white collar website we've been talking about that kind of broke this case open, right? She secured a $218,780 mortgage to do so. Loans secured for the latter property could have reduced her mortgage interest rate by as much as 1%. 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have a loan of $218,000, 1% difference in the mortgage is substantial. And remember, This is one of the main things she was hammering President Donald Trump about. Oh, he misrepresented the truth about the Trump Tower building. The way people like Donald Trump, among other avenues, one of the ways they make money is they go back to the bank every so often and say, hey, Trump Tower, for example, is worth more money than it was last year. So I would like you to give me a loan based on the increased value of the tower, because, of course, the tower his building would also serve as collateral, right? I guess that is pretty self-explanatory. Well, basically, when they have a property that is worth a lot of money and they have a good client like Donald Trump and they know him, they give him favorable interest rates that maybe a regular business person wouldn't get, is probably the best way to say it. Well, that's what she went after and accused Donald Trump of, that he was basically committing fraud because of statements and alleged misrepresentations he was making. And as a result, it basically screwed the bank out of money they could have made. And, she made this long, complicated argument about how taxpayers and the government and the banks and everybody in general was getting ripped off. It was just a complete bunch of nonsense. And again, the irony here, she's now accused of doing pretty well the same thing. Mrs. James, for both properties listed above, appears to have falsified business records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. This is in the letter to Bondi from Blanche. We're going to take a look at that document in just a second. That could amount to criminal charges, including wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements to a financial institution, among others. The document included in his referral are quite damning. George Washington University law professor and Post columnist Jonathan Turley, we all know him, we see him a lot on Fox News, told Fox News host Laura Ingraham Tuesday night, there are misleading statements, he said, on the Ingraham angle. Either it's your principal residence or it's not. And that's very spot on. Remember, you can have as many residents as you want all over the world. It's not a problem. You can only have one domicile, aka one primary residence. That's just the way the law is. And that's one of the main things she's accused of. It goes on. Turley also described it as a perfectly crushing that James would face criminal charges similar to those she brought against Trump and his family. I agree. I think that's pretty well spot on. Now, I want to switch. We're going to take a look at any comments there may be, but I also want to go ahead and switch right now because I want to take a look at the actual letter and the time that I've allotted for today's program, because it's just kind of nice to see a referral like this, to actually see the justice, the karma, if you will. I'm not a karma type guy, but for lack of a better word, that's what I'm going to go ahead and call it. So here is the beautiful document that was the referral from the U.S. Federal Housing Center, which is one of these obscure government agencies, but we're going to take a quick peek at it because I just think it's extremely interesting. Okay, let's take a look at it together. Let's see. All right, Julianne, you're right. She is the biggest bully. That's all she's ever been. She's built her reputation on it. Unfortunately, the constituents in the state of New York apparently bought into that, which is extremely unfortunate. We should demand more of our elected officials, but apparently not in the state of New York. American Anna, as always, hon, it's always good to have you here. Thank you for being here as always. All right, let's take a quick peek at this letter, ladies and gentlemen. All right, U.S. Federal Housing Authority, a.k.a. FHFA. All right, to the Honorable Pam J. Bondi. She's the Attorney General, and her number two guy, so to speak, is Todd Blanche, which, of course, was one of Donald Trump's personal attorney. You don't ever want to see your name on a letter that says criminal referral. That's bad news, ladies and gentlemen, all day long. Dear Attorney General Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, so that's his title, Deputy Attorney General, pursuant to my authority as Director of the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency, I am referring the matter below. As regulator of Fannie Mae, we've all heard of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, right? They're kind of quasi-government government agencies, I guess you could say, of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the Federal Home Loan banks, we take very seriously allegations of mortgage fraud or other criminal activity. Such misconduct jeopardizes the safety and soundness of FA regulated entities and the security and stability of the U.S. mortgage market. I agree. In the course of exercise in U.S. federal housing authorities under the Federal Housing Enterprises Financial Safety and Soundness Act of 1992, U.S. federal housing has identified matters that are appropriate for referral to the U.S. Department of Justice, aka the DOJ. Bad news for Letitia James, for consideration of criminal prosecution. Based on media reports, Miss Letitia James has, in multiple instances, falsified bank documents and property records to acquire government-backed assistance and loans and more favorable loan terms. This has potentially included, one, falsifying the her resident status for a North Fork, Virginia-based home in order to secure a lower mortgage rate, and two, misrepresenting property descriptions to meet stringent requirements for government-backed loans and government assistance. Interesting, right? Background, and this has to do with the residence in North Fork, Virginia, 604 Sterling Street. On August 17, 2023, Miss James granted Miss Shemice Thompson Harrison, one of her family members, power of attorney to make a Virginia property her principal residence. See Exhibit A. And on August 30th and 31st, 2023, through her attorney, Miss James purchased this property in North Fork, Virginia, in a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3047, and in mortgage documents, she reaffirmed this would be her primary residence. Remember, aka domicile, which you can only have one of. Despite being a statewide public office holder in the state of New York at that same time and primarily residing in the state of New York. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely amazing. She goes after all kinds of other people, including President Donald Trump, for this exact same type of crimes, and yet she is out engaging in this type of behavior herself. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very serious crime, even if you've never heard of it. I personally remember a news story, I think it was about 2 years ago. On the other side of the county I live on, there was a heating and air conditioning guy and his wife that basically lied on a federal form when they sold their house. And it was a serious case of fraud. Apparently, there was a sinkhole in their home or right below their home. And when they were paid out for the damages caused by that sinkhole, they simply pocketed the money and they just did basically the minimal repairs that you could possibly do without it being obvious that there's a sinkhole right underneath their house. Well, as it turns out, they sold it to a victim. And I believe this victim was actually harmed because the hole reopened up, as they often do. And when she contacted the previous owners, the ones that are now in jail right now, she was basically said, hey, too bad, so sad, you should have checked it out yourself. But the problem is the feds require, generally, you have to sign certain forms in order to get certain types of federal mortgages or federal loans or different loan rates that you may want. Lying on these forms is very serious. It's basically perjury is what it is. And this is the gospel truth. The husband and the wife right now today are doing 20 years in a federal pen for that. So it is a serious crime, and the government has a record of going after people that engage in these types of behaviors. So I want everybody just to kind of keep that in mind. Eric Adams changed gear. I'm sure he has. I've been following him a little bit, Julianne. Monique, thank you for being here, sweetheart. It's always a pleasure to have you listen in on our talk. Thank you for being here, everybody. All right, let's get back on this real quick, and then we'll chat more. In fact, a building permit issued on her New York property on July 15, 2024 lists her New York property as the James's residence and states remain occupied. And then they have a copy of it right here. Primary residence mortgages receive more favorable loan terms. If you live in the house and it's your actual house that you actually live in, you get more favorable terms, as we've been discussing, including lower interest rates, than secondary resident mortgages. In other words, if you own a second home, you're probably going to have a higher mortgage rate and less favorable terms on that particular loan. And the reason for that is real simple. The government basically wants to help, they want to encourage families that live in and occupy their own home. It's really just that simple. And it kind of makes sense, at least does to me. Lenders view secondary residence mortgages as significantly riskier, as a borrower is more likely to continue paying off a primary residence mortgage during any financial hardship. Again, that makes perfect sense. Interest rates on second resident mortgages are typically between 0.25 and 0.5% higher than primary mortgage residence counterparts. However, this gap can widen depending on the lender. At the time of the 2023 Norfolk, Virginia property purchase, Miss James was the sitting Attorney General of the state of New York and is required by law to have her primary residence in the state of New York. Boom. That's what we've been talking about. Even though her mortgage application lists her intent to have the Norfolk, Virginia property as her primary home, it appears Miss James' property and the mortgage-related misrepresentations may have continued to her recent 2023 Norfolk, Virginia property purchase in order to secure lower interest rates and more favorable loan terms. She has more than one residence, and from what I understand from reports I've been reading and other things I've been finding online, this is kind of like an Alice in Wonderland story for a crime, for a criminal. This is just the beginning of it. The hole, as they're going down it, is getting longer, deeper, and wider. Here's a home she owns in Brooklyn, New York. We're just going to touch on the highlights here. As it says, a January 26, 2001 certificate of occupancy lists this property as having 5 units. And they have the exhibit here. On February 14, 2001, Valentine's Day, of course, Miss Letitia James purchased this 5-family dwelling. Mrs. James secured a confirming loan through Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3033. Again, we're talking about federal forms here. Confirming loans are only available on 4 units or less structures. Again, we're talking about more fraud. Spanning the last 2 decades, Ms. James has consistently misrepresented the same property as only having 4 units in both building permit applications and numerous mortgage documents and applications. This even includes a 2011 application for the Affordable Home Modification Program, HAMP, see Exhibit D, and most recently a 2019 mortgage refinancing loan through Freddie Mac and the Fannie Mae and the Freddie Mac lender. Conforming loans or Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac backed mortgages have favorable rates and interest terms to traditional private market mortgages for the explicit purpose of availability to low and middle income borrowers. Bottom line is, she's caught. Checkmate. This is bad. If this is true, she's in a lot of problems. The analysis here. Mrs. James, for both properties listed above, appears to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. U.S. Federal Housing believes this and other alleged misconduct could be violations of the criminal code under USC sections and other sections here. How about that, huh? These are unfortunately too many examples of individuals who commit fraud and mortgage fraud. Just last year, a federal jury convicted Marilyn J. Mosby of Baltimore, Maryland, on the federal charge of making a false mortgage application when she was Baltimore City State Attorney. Boom. That's one of the ones we've been talking about that I was just mentioning that went after Donald Trump. She spent time in the pen. It's kind of interesting that he would relate a very similar crime and the fact that she was kicked out of office and she had to serve time in the pen. How about that, huh? And he goes on, relating to the purchase of her property in Florida. Just last week, after the hard work of our agency's IG and the DOJ, a St. Louis man pled guilty to fraudulently obtaining home mortgages. So they're already making examples, and they're going to add her to the example list. I just have that feeling. That's just too bad. So sad, right? As always, we look forward to cooperating with the Department of Justice to support any actions the Department of Justice finds appropriate. U.S. Federal Housing appreciates the DOJ support in ensuring the protection of American homebuyers and taxpayers from mortgage fraud and other financial misconduct. I almost feel like I got a tear welling up right here. That was really beautiful, wasn't it? Gotta love it. Too bad for her. Hey, when you engage in that type of behavior and you start going after other people for their alleged misdeeds, you better have very clean sheets, if you know what I'm saying, because they're going to check and other people are going to check, and you just better be living righteous. Do you know what I'm saying? I just think that's the way it's got to be. And Julianne, you're right. Trump posted she needs to resign immediately. I think I did see that post. I know I saw one from the other day where he was just reiterating the current investigation that was going on. But yes, she's definitely a crook. Gino, you're exactly right. She is a crook. We always knew she was a crook. It's just a matter of being able to prove it. Virginia prison or New York, yeah. Well, it will be a federal pen, and it'll be interesting to see which one she goes to. She may be joining other somewhat famous people in the pen. Who's that in pen? Isn't that one rapper out? That guy used to call himself Puff Daddy or something like that. Yeah, P Diddy. Maybe she'll be roommates with him. That would be kind of, in my mind, that'd be kind of funny if it turned out like that. What do you think about that? Isn't that interesting, right? As far as you're going around and you're going after other people and you're trying to take all their money. She's the same one that was laughing and talking about how, hey, I'm going to go after this guy's business or that person. She wanted to take Donald Trump's name off of his buildings. I remember one of her interviews, she was like, oh, every time I drive to work, I see this building, this Trump building, and I just can't wait to go down there and strip the name off his building. Well, unfortunately for her, it appears, ladies and gentlemen, she is going to be the next example of what happens when you go after someone like Donald Trump. And, hey, it is what it is, right? I don't really have much pity. A couple things I want to show us and review here real quick. I think these are kind of cool. This was a post that she had. This is dated February 16th, 2024 on her X page, right? When powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of hardworking people. Everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank to get a mortgage. And if they did, our government would throw the book at them. There simply cannot be different rules for different people. Ouch, right? And you have our buddy Brian Reynolds putting one up here. This was again February 14th, 2024 by Tish James on I guess this is another X account of hers. Roses are red, violets are blue. No one is above the law, even when you think the rules don't apply to you. Happy Valentine's Day. We need to send her a card next Valentine's Day, right? Wouldn't that be hilarious? Here's one of her greatest hits, by the way.
I'm prepared. My mission is clear. I'm focused. I'm prepared. I'm ready. I've been trained by the best. I went to Howard University that overturned legal segregation in this country. I've been taught in those classrooms where Thurgood Marshall once taught. I'm not afraid of no president. Donald Trump, we're ready for you. We're coming for you. We're standing up for you. We're fighting on. We're not going down silent. Victory, my friends, is clear. It's now. And I'm not waiting 4 years. I'm waiting 2 until a speaker by the name of Hakeem Jeffries comes to bring us some rest. Come on, ladies. It's up to us. We saved this democracy before. We'll save it now. Let's go.
Oh, I'm sorry you have to hear her screaming, ugly voice. She is one of those politicians that plays that race card every chance she gets. She just loves to stay in the public eye, and that's just some of the nonsense that she's always spewing all the time. And it just, It's old to say the least. Here's an
and that
interview
politics. There
with,
are
Anderson Cooper back in 2019.
Certainly a lot of supporters of the president who will look at this and say, well, look, you're a Democrat, and so is the governor, and all of these things. The foundation investigation was launched once he was running and became president. This wasn't while he was a private citizen. And that politics is behind it.
If there is in fact any allegation of wrongdoing, we have an obligation to launch an investigation.
That's right. We have an obligation to launch the investigation. Gotta love it, right? That's just too bad. So sad. And here's our buddy Jonathan Turley.
Trump for
Let's
everything
see what he
short.
says right here.
Well, obviously, the irony is perfectly crushing. This is a person who prosecuted Trump for everything short of ripping a label off a mattress. And among the charges that were brought in New York, in not just the civil but the criminal case, was making false or misleading statements to financial institutions. And one of these sections, Section 1014 of the federal code, is prosecuted. It took me about 60 seconds of a search to find cases that the Department of Justice brought against people who falsely claimed that property was their principal residence in order to get loans.
Exactly. It's a very common crime, if you will, to be prosecuted by the feds. It's not that she's the example or she's going to be the example. It is what it is. Oh, you're right, Julianne. Thank you, Sean Combs. That'd be funny if that was her Sally, but we'll see how that works. Monique, the fact that she was going after Trump at the same time she was committing this crime as well. I totally agree. Absolutely agree. She's going after him and hammering him at every single term, trying to literally take all of his money, take his business, even went after his children. His adult children, even went after his children. That's the reason, by the way. Have you noticed you rarely see Ivana Trump? You don't see her in the public eye because she has made the conscious choice that, hey, I support my dad, I love my dad, but I'm going to support behind the scenes. She doesn't want to go through what Letitia James put her through. And you know what? Frankly, who could blame her? Julianne, I bet her heart skipped a beat or two. Yeah, I thought the same thing too. When Trump won, she probably was thinking, oh no. Yeah, she is scared of this. Yeah, she's in trouble. I would not be sleeping very well. Yep, she thought the Dems would never lose the election. I have a feeling a lot of them were thinking that. Lavish, the khaki, yeah, she's definitely crooked. No doubt about that. You guys are right on the money. Yeah, listen. It is what it is. You do the crime, you do the time, or whatever they say. That's just the way that I see it. And I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for her. Now, I will say I don't like to see anyone going to jail. Who wants to wish that on any person? At the same time, I just don't feel too bad for her. And I'm sure y'all kind of echo that same sentiment. I mean, this is a woman that, frankly, if she ends up convicted, she deserves what she's about to go through, and she's going to join the likes of that Baltimore mayor and I guess that other Baltimore attorney, whatever these other public officials are that end up in jail as a result of shouting from the mountaintop, and then they start getting checked out. They don't like it when that heat is turned on them, right? Too bad, so sad. It just feels sweet. It feels good, and I think Donald Trump's doing a fantastic job, and we'll just have to see where it goes to from here. All right, folks, I appreciate everybody joining me today. If you haven't done so already, please hit the thumbs up button. It helps the channel. Subscribe. You get notified when I go live again. Also, you can always hit that thumbs up button in addition to subscribing. I definitely appreciate that. Always like to say, keep that mind free. Never give up. Until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.